Welcome to the BZen Wellness Podcast, where we journey through personal stories of transformation and resilience.
This is a space for us to share insights from our experiences and the wisdom of the experts and mentors who have guided us.
I'm your host, Jonah Boersma, certified life and relationship coach.
And I'm your host, Brittany Boersma, registered yoga teacher, breathwork facilitator, and ceremonialist.
If you're enthusiastic about personal development, you're in the right place.
Let's dig in. So we like to start our sessions off with a deep breath, deep belly breath. So just everybody focus on your belly. Big inhale through the nose, expand your belly nice and big. And sigh it all the way. Now it feels like we can begin.
Y'all, we have Kyle Kingsbury here with us today.
Ow, ow!
Thank you for being here, Kyle. Let me read you his bio really quickly. Kyle Kingsbury is a former UFC fighter and the host of the Kyle Kingsbury podcast, where he's interviewed world-class athletes, doctors, and entrepreneurs for over 7 years. Previously the director of human optimization at Onnit, Kyle now focuses on healing and optimizing the brain and body, particularly after traumatic injury. He's also a first-generation farmer at Gardeners of Eden, which is a nonprofit regenerative farm, and an advocate for longevity, fitness, fasting, and nutrition. Kyle is a dedicated husband, father, and lifelong learner in human performance and wellness.
And he started from the bottom, now he's here.
That's right.
Kyle, thank you so much for being here. We've known each other now for about 6 years, and we met through the Fit for Service program back in 2019, early 2019. And for me, the one thing that I noticed about you initially was that you were just like freaking massively cut and huge and like so intimidating on a physical level. And the one thing that stood out for me in that first year of Fit for Service was like, I'm around a bunch of like legit dudes. And that was a little bit intimidating. I, at the time, was coming from a place of, it felt like a little bit of loneliness. We were kind of going through this transition. I was going through this transition in my life. It was like a big identity shift for me. And I was really in search of a new community, a new network. Like I knew I needed growth. And initially when I met you, I was like, I don't know if this guy is really my guy to learn from or grow with. And holy shit, did you prove me wrong?
He's a bear.
Like at first glance, I'm like, this dude is obviously athletic. He's super buff. I didn't know anything about your background or your history. But when I finally got to learn from you and hear you speak, I was like, there is so much more than what meets the eye. And that made me feel a little bit silly about my judgments, but also made me realize that there was just so much for me to learn still. And that was really beautiful. It was really impactful for me. And I'll never forget when we were in Lake Tahoe in, I think, 2020. Mm-hmm. And I don't even remember what your workshop was about. But I just remember this overwhelming feeling of like, I just felt so proud to know you and to be able to call you not just my coach, but I felt like a friendship. Yeah. I think I even told you at one point, I'm so proud of you and I don't know why, but I feel it. I feel it. And I think it's because I felt so much inspiration. Mm-hmm. And so I just am in a lot of gratitude to be able to sit here with you today and to know that, this is kind of just the beginning, really, because there's so much more to come.
Yeah, it's funny. It's an oddly common theme. I don't know if I have like, I know I have jock vibes, but if it's like the high school asshole that you hated, that's what people see in me, at first. Letterman wearing varsity football prick, that picked on me in between class. I don't know. But yeah, it's usually women, but occasionally there's dudes. I remember there was a guy one year, he was either from Mexico or Central America, but he was like, Jesus Christ, put a fucking shirt on, because I'd always have my shirt off and it's like solar panels, dude. Like I'm not doing this to flex on the crew. I'm doing this because I want sunshine. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Well, I just literally came from the sun to jump on a call and didn't want to throw a shirt on. I'm sweating. Why would I get a shirt dirty just to be in front of my family? Like I don't need a shirt for this. It was hilarious, but same thing, towards the end of the year, like there was an older lady at Lockhart that had the same thing. It was right when we got the farm, but before we had moved there. and we had an event there, and I had bought 40 chickens, and we were going to raise them in our house in Austin. So literally in the living room floor, we had these baby chicks in a trough, and my wife and I every morning would take it outside with all the chicks in it. We'd let them out in the chicken, whatever the chicken run, and then we'd clean out all the wood chips and pine chips and all that, and then set it back in there. And at the end of the day, we'd bust that thing back out, load them all into it, and bring them in so they could be under the red light. And so I was talking to one of the guys about, I'm like, dude, you got to come over. We got 40 chicks at the crib. And her mouth drops like, I can't believe this guy. And then she found out later that I was actually talking about baby chickens.
With so many women. Wow.
That'd be a lot of chicks.
I've never been that good, dude. Never been that good. Never had 40 chicks at the crib.
Then you have shown up for us in such profound ways. I remember in 2021, when I first learned about the cancerous tumor in my breast, I had reached out to you right away in a total panic. And I feel like we hopped on a call. You had called me right away. There was no judgment either, and no panic in your voice at all, which was so great because I keep calling healthcare health scare these days because everybody's just really scaring you about everything.
Oh, yeah.
So I was in this instant fear state. And you said, hey, there's just some confused cells in your body. We'll take care of that. You'll get that out. And there is no question about it. You are healthy. You are happy. You are whole. And I've had that written down. It's actually written all over our business stuff. I've got a pen that says, I am healthy. I am happy. I am whole. And it continues to reverberate. Even now through this pregnancy, I now say, we are healthy. We are happy. We are whole with this sweet baby that we're growing. And you've just made such an impact on my life and showed up for me in the most trying times. So thank you for that.
You're so welcome. Yeah, I'm getting teary-eyed. It's actually there's a song from Uncle Paul Check, one of my mentors, where we just sing that over and over again. And we would do that pre-ceremony as a little harmony, harmonize either with the drums or with rattles so that everyone comes into the same frequency. So you hold the same beat and then you can play off that. And since then, Aubrey and I would do that in our own journeys. And whether that's on one big single drum, or we have to play a single beat and then riff off of that, or everybody has something in there. But if you have no instruments, you use the voice. So we would sing, we are happy, we are healthy, we are whole. We give our love wherever we go. That's why we're happy and we're healthy and we're whole. We give our love wherever we go. And you just on repeat for like 10 minutes till it's drilled into your psyche, so like as the medicine comes on, that's the imprint of the technology, no matter how rough it gets, you have that.
Well, and it's planted in my entire being. And any woman, I get to talk with a lot of women on this path who are either going through breast cancer or they're on the IVF path, or now I've just been talking with a lot of pregnant women. And that's just something that I continue to bring forward is we are healthy, we are happy, we are whole. And in this podcast, we end, I believe, with remember, you are already whole. Like, what if it is we are? And when I learned about the cancerous tumor, I was really healthy. Never once had I felt sick. And even through the entire journey, I continued to get healthier and healthier. And even now, getting to be in your program with Physically Fit and then moving into getting pregnant, you showed up for us in such a wonderful way too, to help us move forward into our fertility journey and to optimize our bodies and our minds. And I just love too that you, especially in your programming, you understand the difference between men and women, because I just learned this last week, only in the last 10 years have we really been studying the female body and our hormones. And especially during pregnancy is not even studied hardly at all. So I just really appreciate that and your research and your mind and diving in, and not just optimization for men, but optimization for women.
Yeah. There's levels to the game. We talked about black belts, it's like you beat Super Mario and it just starts over and it's harder now, so like getting a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And then I roll with a guy like Robert Drysdale, who's got his black belt before I ever put a gi on, and he could just toy with me like I was a little kid, like I'd never done jiu-jitsu, anything about that to the levels of the game with mastery and health and wellness or anything for that matter. And although I'm working towards, being what Paul Chek is now at 63 and will be uniquely my own version of that, we need shit now. We need answers now. And so when I find, on God's Rolodex, the master of something who's made it their forte to only really deep dive into one particular aspect, but still understands the whole. There's experts in every field, but they get lost in the thing they're staring at under a microscope and can't piece it back together holistically. One of the people I find do that, and I've been super fortunate to meet so many great people and not just have them on the podcast, but really get to know them. And the first time I hung with Dr. Nathan Riley was at Chek's 60th birthday. He's such a beautiful soul and he's Chek trained and he understands holistically. That's why he's the holistic OBGYN. He has so much to offer and he's taught me so much from the female side too on the differences that has really been awesome. And there's guys like Dr. Michael Ruscio who wrote Healthy Gut, Healthy You, who's healed thousands of patients with Hashimoto's, not preliminary, but like fucked up autoimmune issues. And, he's Rob Wolf's gut expert. And thankfully he's my gut expert too. If I got somebody in a pinch there, I can take him to the best in the world for any particular aspect. I really appreciate that about the fortune of my life and getting to meet these awesome people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like your journey has been really profound too in becoming a father. What changed in your life from the moment you became a dad that you'd want to share even with Jonah being a first-time dad?
Yeah, it's a little, everyone's different. So I would like to say the place I was at in my life is far different than where Jonah's at in his right now, but there are some similarities. First, I'll say, I was fighting in the UFC and I didn't make any money. I was making less than a teacher would make. 10 grand to show up, another 10 grand to win. I'm lucky if I fought 3 times that year. If I won all 3 fights, that's 60 grand. Then you got to spend 13.3 in California, 10% to coaches and managers. That's 20. And then you go, the rest of the feds, you're walking with like 28 fucking grand, right? Dang. So I lived in my mom's garage for 5 years while I was fighting in the UFC. And Tosh lived there with me. That's how I knew she was my fucking ride or die, because she was down to live in a garage for 5 years. And I never really had like a burning, when I retired in 2014, I was 32. And it was just time to move on. And I was still working at a strip club twice a week as the bartender, bouncer, and general manager. And I'd go in for an 11-hour shift Saturdays and Sundays and have 5 days off. So it's kind of like Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week. It's like we can drive to Tahoe, we can drive to Santa Cruz, we can go hike anywhere we want, we can go run. We have all this time, and because our overhead is so low, we can make do for now. And I was really cool with that. It was a cool point in our lives with a lot less pressure. And then we got pregnant with Bear after a couple ayahuasca journeys showed us, he was coming. And it wasn't until we had him, but then like every provider instinct came on board. Like the first thing that comes online when you hold your baby is, holy shit, it's my job to keep you alive.
No pressure.
Like that understanding is so primal. But at some point it just switched on. I can't raise Bear in a fucking detached garage, it's obvious to other people, but we were just fine until we had him there. And then he'd stand in his crib and point at our bed until I'd pull him into bed. So we co-slept with him till he was 6 pretty much. And I think one of the most helpful things dads can do, you're both going to be tired no matter what. It's better to show up as best you can. So I'd pull him out of the crib. Eventually I wouldn't even have him in the crib, but I'd sleep with my back to mom, because the kid's going to go hot dog style, then hamburger style and kick you in the face. And I'd rather me get kicked in the face than her.
Somersaults.
Yeah, exactly. So then like push his legs back, pull him in. When he starts crying, change the diaper, then put him on the boob. Right. And stay awake long enough if I could, or let her wake me back up and then swap him back to the other side so he can't kick mom. And I did that for as long as necessary. And I think that was a really big thing. Everyone does it their own way, no judgment, but I had a lot of fighters that, they were still having kids during fight camp. So fight camp comes, they'd sleep downstairs or in another room. I can't imagine the resentment mom is feeling towards you right now. She probably wants to fucking cut your head off because she's got to do it so long, I can't even picture that, but it's, there's 100 ways to do it, but I really do, knowing indigenous people slept in the same teepee until their daughters left till they were 12. They weren't all huddled in a king size bed together, but they were under the same thing in the same space. Gabor Mate's book, Hold On Your Kids, another good one, like really talking about the literal holding on to your kids, and that parent-child attachment is so important. And people, through a lot of wrong thinking and authoring, people have thought it's better to let your kids be independent right from the jump. And then they, form bonds with peers, which are fragile bonds at best. Another great book for parents is The Collapse of Parenting by Leonard Sachs. He's a family medicine doctor, MD, and he has a PhD in psychology. So he's brilliant, like one of the best guys to listen to on that. And he really hones in a different way what Gabor Mate is pointing to with the child and parent attachment. So you just got me rambling on parenthood now, but
I know, I love it. Daddy Kyle.
Well, and it's interesting, like you're right. We are in different places where, I'm feeling like I'm older now that we're bringing in our first child into the world.
You're not in the garage.
And I'm not in a garage. That's true. And as I think about that and being, I'm going to be turning 40 shortly after our baby is born. And as I look at my life, I've always been like so jazzed to be in my 30s. I've always, even in my teenage years, I kept thinking like when I'm in my 30s, like I'm going to be set. Life is going to be amazing. But I never really quite pictured into the future beyond that. It was always like, that's going to be the decade. And now that I think about moving into my 40s, I'm like, it's going to be even better than my 30s. Like I just know it. But my mindset has shifted a lot in terms of taking better care of myself. My 20s, there was plenty of debauchery and not really having my health and my fitness and my well-being at the forefront of my mind. It just wasn't really there. I had a lot of responsibility, and with that, we had a lot of fun. But now I'm thinking in terms of my longevity, because as I'm bringing a kid into the world, as we're bringing a kid into the world, I am like, man, I want to be able and ready to play and adventure and take care when they're sick. And just all of these things come to mind for me of like, it's a different game for me now in my life. And as I look ahead, longevity feels really important. And so I'm curious to hear from you as what changed for you and your perspective of your health and your well-being as you were becoming a father?
Yeah, it's a great question. Football was one thing. I played football growing up, finished at Arizona State, and the debauchery could live with football in tandem, right? Because football didn't demand that much. And then fighting, I kind of lived this polarized life where in camp I had to be perfect. I wasn't good enough to fuck off. I couldn't show up to a fight like John Jones, having done blow at a strip club the night before and be world champion. That just wasn't me. So I was strict for 8 weeks doing breath work, meditation, reading as much as I could on performance and longevity and things like that. And then up to the fight, all bets were off. I'm shoving ecstasy in my poop chute and eating Whoppers at Burger King and whatever the fuck I wanted. It was like literally whatever I wanted. And I enjoyed that because I had earned it, and it was my wife, Natasha, that was like, this doesn't make sense. You can't throw everything you learn and how to eat and be healthy and all of Paul Chek's wisdom out the window just because you fought, like this comes at a cost, right? You're going to have to pay the tab. It's fun, but it's on credit. You have a debt to pay back. And she was right. And thankfully with Aya, that started to shift in how I wanted to treat myself even before we had kids. But with kids, it started to change drastically, and we were like the cool parents when we got on it in Austin. It was like, you guys still know how to party and have fun. And that makes me feel better about having kids. And, we go to Burning Man. First time, it wasn't that bad. We had to leave in 3 days for a wedding I was in, which is never do that again. Don't go straight to a wedding from Burning Man and imagine like Wyclef on, your top 40 fucking wedding hits post burn. Not great. The second time we went though, in 2018, we went for 5 days and it was so much fun and we didn't take a day off and we came back and same thing, that trip was paid in full, but same thing, we get back. And we were an emotional wreck for 2 weeks. And I just remember laying on the couch where my headache was so bad I couldn't sit up. And Tasha's crying and we apologized to Bear. Mommy and Daddy won't do this again. And I know a lot of people who, drink booze or whatever to as their way to let loose, do so without being shit-faced in front of their kids, or they do it in a way where like, even if they're hungover, they can mask it somehow the next day. You know, like their kids don't, like my dad's a piece of shit. And there are plenty of pieces of shit parents out there, you know, that don't really care what their kids think of them the next morning. But for us, that was a valuable lesson, you know, and what we think of. So like when we're in Costa Rica, it's fucking game on. You know, like I'll pull out all the old fun. We'll have all the thrills, because I know I got the next day to get an IV and to recover and to go in the ocean. But if there's something big going on in Austin, I'm not out late. You know, I'll have a little kratom. I'll relax and enjoy myself and have a good time. And I'm in bed by 10. You know, that's just how it shifted over time. And, you know, the recovery aspects too change. Like when you're 20, I could go out and drink till I was hammered, leave the bar at 1 o'clock, go home, not really sleep for 3 hours, roll out of bed and drive to the practice field at 5 and run wind sprints with the team. Then go PR in the gym right after. Like I hadn't been out the night before. Like I could do the John Jones shit when I was in football. But that catches up with you, you know, and I'm 42 now. There's so many people that talk about biohacking and living to 150, and it's a joke. And I'm like, I want to live well to 100, you know. And then Hermosi just had that thing where he's like, most of you aren't going to live to 100. That's like 3 out of 5,000 or something will live to 100. Most men are going to die at the mean, which is 74. It's like if you're 37, you're halfway there. Think about it that way. And he uses that as an inspirational piece to light the fire under your ass to do something with your life. Like, what are you waiting for? You're on the back half right now, you know. And if I really think of it that way, I truly do just want to be able to live well, whether I go at 74, 100, 80, any of that stuff. It doesn't, the age, the number when I go doesn't so much matter as me having full faculty, full freedom, full use of my body. Paul says it this way. Chuck says, your health will be your number one concern sooner or later. That's it. Your health will be your number one concern sooner or later, either when you're on your deathbed, or you can make it your number one concern right now, right? And you can make that a priority right now, especially with the uncanny amount. I would do a whole podcast talking about my injuries from fighting in football. I don't live in pain right now because of how I treat my body. But if I throw caution to the wind and stay up late and eat like shit, every old injury comes singing back like they never left, right? The broken neck, the eyes, the jaw, the knees, all of it comes back in an instant. If I'm not taking care of myself, if the noise of inflammation starts to raise, all of it's still there. So I have that choice, and my body's like a tuning fork for me to know, treat myself well, no pain, full freedom, or to treat myself unwell, pain, I'm not myself, and I don't have full freedom. I'm a prisoner in my own body.
That resonates with me a lot. That phrase, being a prisoner of your own body, because my dad had passed away from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And my family watched him and just were witness to every aspect of his physicality just deteriorating. And yet he was still there. Mm-hmm. And that was in my early 20s. And that was really the first time my own health was kind of put into question. But I also didn't have nearly as many tools or practices as I have today. And I didn't take all of that information and all of the things that I observed and witnessed into account and embody what I was really learning from it. And instead, I definitely numbed and had to process that loss and the trauma of it. And, you know, with the breast cancer experience, like that got thrown in our faces for Brittany. And at least with Brittany and I feel like her experience and the journey with dealing with breast cancer, that like brought us together in such a profound and beautiful way. It was like nothing else mattered in the world except for us and our health. And that really cascaded a lot of change for us. And it's really interesting to just bear witness to that. When your mortality is thrown in your face, what else matters to you?
Yeah.
Not much. It's like, no, I actually just want to fucking live. I want to be alive and I want to be healthy. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. And speaking to like all of the injuries that you've experienced, like all kinds of broken bones, torn ligaments, all kinds of things.
Lots of surgeries?
You know, I had jaw surgery and shoulder surgery. That's it. I've avoided knee surgeries. I haven't had any major tears in the knees, but I've torn my meniscus on both sides pretty much until they're no longer there. So it's bone on bone. But thankfully I've avoided ACL, PCL, MCL on the knees. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Labrum surgery on the right shoulder was a big one. It took me about 2 years to come back from that.
That's a big one.
They say it's like 6 weeks. It's like you're 6 weeks in a sling. You can bring your arm up to Hail Hitler, but you can't get overhead for at least a year. And then to add strength back to that took 2 years.
Yeah, mastectomy surgery just takes so long. And I still notice my scars will get really tight. So I get myofascial release on the scars. But you were going to go somewhere with that.
Yeah, we have a friend who recently, about a year ago, had a labrum surgery. We have another friend that just had an ACL surgery. And I'm just kind of thinking about some of the people out there that are just dealing with the recovery of not just surgeries, but just injury in general. And I wonder what would a really great piece of advice you might have for somebody that's maybe struggling in recovering from some kind of an injury or a surgery.
Yeah, I mean, the things that come to mind now are basics win every time. And so your foundation has to be set perfectly. And I could tell you, like follow an anti-inflammatory diet. What the fuck does that mean? Right? Because there's some things that are inflammatory to all of us or most of us, but there's nothing universal about diet, right? And I can talk like Dr. Stephen Gundry, who wrote The Plant Paradox. There's lectins, there's all the phytates, there's phytic acid, there's all these things that are anti-nutrients and things that are inflammatory, that oxalates, they'll hurt your body and cause inflammation. And there's whole cultures that live on corn and beans and don't have those issues. Right. And like they're more dialed to that. So you follow like Weston A. Price, who was a dentist in the 30s. And obviously I've included you guys in on his work. He looked at all indigenous cultures and what they ate. And the closer to the equator they were, the more carbohydrate dense their foods were. They didn't have a winter. The smaller their animals were that they ate. Then you go to the poles, you've got bigger things like bison and heavier meats and ribeyes. And you do have a winter and you don't have carbohydrates year round. And so loosely, that's a way to pattern that. In Paul Chek's book, How to Move and Be Healthy, there's questionnaires that you can just fill out that help you kind of fine tune that. And following that will help show you just a general starting place on what food is right for you in particular. CGMs are really cool because then you get to dial in exactly what food is doing what in your body. So I like companies like NutriSense.io. Levels is another great one. With they're founded by Callie and Casey Means. They've been on Tucker Carlson's. They wrote Good Energy, all on metabolic health. So improving metabolic health is what's going to lower inflammation. Not eating things that raise blood sugar also is anti-inflammatory. It's not just a avoid beans kind of thing, right? And then seeing what it does in your body. Like if you eat beans, and Chek does fucking great with beans. That's why I bring this up. He has beans almost 2 or 3 times a day, right? He eats beans and eggs for breakfast.
It's a magical fruit.
It's like, dude is all about beans. They don't fuck with him at all. And yet he can't eat red meat. He can't eat a number of other things, or at least cattle. He can eat, lamb and things like that for red meat. So those are the particulars. We're all individual, and it's really running the N=1 experiment to figure out what works for you. Getting diet dialed, getting sleep dialed, super important. Peptides are fucking phenomenal. Like Greenfield told me, I want one foot based in ancestral living, the wisdom of ancestral living, and 1 foot in the miracle of modern science. And so there's peptides like BPC 157, TB 500, growth analogs like IGF-1, LR3, all these things can help you heal quicker. The study they did on BPC was a nasty one. They severed the Achilles with a scalpel of rats. Oh. Group A got BPC, Group B got nothing. And Group A healed 6 times faster than Group B. And then it has a very low side effect profile. You can order the shit online. I mean, it's not ultra complicated. And then finally, your mobility piece is probably the biggest one. That's what took me the longest to get back. That's when I fell in love with Dr. Kelly Starrett, who was up in San Francisco when I was down in the South Bay. He wrote Becoming a Supple Leopard, which is like your head to toe textbook on how to do PT for yourself using lacrosse balls, foam rollers, bands, that kind of stuff. And he's invented some pretty cool tech too that's sold on Rogue or on Amazon, different ways, Graston, that kind of stuff where you can dig into the body, open up the fascia and get your mobility back. Because without mobility, that's where you're going to get hurt. If you're not, I've been telling this to my 9-year-old son who does jujitsu, but can barely touch his toes. Like my strength coach in college was one of the greatest strength coaches in football history. He's the only guy to win strength coach of the year in Division I football at ASU and in the NFL for the Carolina Panthers. Big house, Joe Ken. And also goes, Kingsbury, if you can't touch your fucking toes, you're going to pull a hamstring, because we'd all have to stretch together.
For real.
Right? And I was like, what are you talking about, man? I could kind of get down there. He's like, you're going to pull a fucking hammy. You need to get more mobile. So I started stretching more, and I made a point when I was 268 pounds my senior year, I made a point just every day, I'm going to try to touch my toes until I could go palms to floor cold, right? When I roll out of bed, right? And like anyone can get that. You just have to work towards it. But getting introduced to Kelly Starrett was amazing because he had the how-to guide for your whole body. And there's some things we all need because we're sitting right now. So I talk a lot about the super couch stretch. You can Google that super couch stretch, Kelly Starrett, and he'll show you arguably the most important stretch for human beings right now that unlocks your neck, your low back, your psoas, so much, right? Anterior chain and posterior chain. But it's really figuring out what that looks like for you and not reading the book start to finish, going to where you have a problem, mastering that, and with what little time we all have, because we know we're all busy, and then seeing what can you allocate, right? And he says it's like flossing your teeth. You want to do that daily, floss the body daily. And that's what gets you to become a bit more supple. You know, you don't see a leopard jogging a lap around a track and going through 15 minutes of calisthenics before it hunts. It does up dog, down dog, and springs into action because it's fucking supple. Mm-hmm. And we can get there. Mm-hmm. We just got to put in a little work to get there.
Yeah. I mean, I could just feel after the surgery, just being so tight, staying in one position for so long, sleeping in one position for so long, just getting on the floor and opening up my hips, extending the legs, just really simple things that I couldn't necessarily do with my upper body. I was doing with my lower body because that creates circulation. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that is a huge piece that we got to learn in your Physically Fit program was needing light. Health and Light by John Ott is the book that you were referencing a bunch. And as soon as I got pregnant, I think a week in, I was having my first trimester symptoms. I was nauseous and just struggling.
It was brutal.
And I'm just curled up on the couch and I'm like, I just can't function. And Jonah's like, I'm going to make you a place outside in the sunshine. And he made me a little bed outside and with my water. And I just had to hobble out there. And just getting in the sun made such a difference. And it was night and day with my mood and how I was afterward, because I was curled up on the couch inside needing fresh air.
I was like, Brittany, if you're going to feel like shit, you might as well feel like shit in the sun. Why not?
And then you don't feel like shit anymore.
Yep. And then after my mastectomy surgery, every morning I would have booby time and I'd go out and have my breasts right out in the sunshine and get light on my skin.
Yeah, and literally like the day after surgery, you were doing that.
Yeah, not too long because you don't want to mess up the scars, but just getting enough light on there to continue with the circulation, and our bodies need it so bad.
Yeah, it's such an important one. You know, Godzi and I often get ridiculed for how many books we recommend, you know, and I there's a lot of people who drop knowledge and don't say where it comes from. And it just kind of irks me because it's like, that shit didn't come from you, dude. You
right.
know, like it's just as simple as that. Like, where did you read that? Did you read it online? Is it a study you checked out? Was it a post? Was it a book? Was it a documentary? And so I always like giving that information out, but it can feel like a lot for people who are like, oh, you know, Sleep by Nick Littlehale, and there's 30 books to read and all that stuff. So I really try to simplify for the class, which is named Physically Fit out of just fit for service. It fits with fit for service, but it's more about holistic health. And I want to condense, like, what are the two most important books? No more, just the 1, 2. And so it's How Do You Move Me Healthy by Paul Chek, which we've been talking about, and then Health and Light by John Ott. And a lot of people know who Dr. Jack Cruz is, Uncle Jack, as he calls himself affectionately and speaks in the third person as he's talking shit to the whole world. I got a lot of respect for Uncle Jack, and he's a fucking caricature of a human, you know, but I'd been following him over the years. One of his understudies was a guy named Matt Maruka, who I had on the podcast. He was like 18-year-old boy genius who healed his own autoimmune issues and all sorts of shit by diving into diet and then later getting into light. And he said of the two, light is far more important. And that's a big fucking statement. And that's why, in part, Jack Cruz talks shit about all the diet-related people out there. Because if you fix sunlight, you fix a lot of the issues we have with digestion, processing, blood sugar management, you name it, right? And that's a weird thing to think because most people, it's not what we're taught. And most people are taught that too much sunlight's a bad thing and that you'll get skin cancer and all that. So how they figured out in a lab, which is one thing that Jack Kruse was great about, and he really hammered Andrew Huberman about this for 9 hours on tetragrammaton. 9 hours, he just drilled him, was that every study you've done in a lab, there's nowhere else where that exists. Right? So how do they find out or figure out that UV causes melanoma? They put rats under 100% UV light and it gave a melanoma. Where on earth, where in the solar system or the known universe is there 100% UV? Nowhere but the fucking lab. They decided to run that test. It doesn't exist. Even midday, it's 50% red and IR. The good shit that we want, the stuff that's going to pass 8 inches through every cell of our body, the stuff that's going to structure all the water and bring it to the fourth phase, easy water, right? That's what we're getting midday. 25% of that is UV, which John Ott clearly argues is a very necessary component for us, and not just us, but for plants, because he started all his work with plants. Back then, every microscope came with a different filter, like a red filter, a yellow filter, a blue filter, because if you were looking at a chloroplast or some other cell under a microscope, it would show up better under a different light. And then he did time-lapse photography. He was the first guy to use time-lapse photography with a microscope. And so he could see the function of a mitochondria. Normally, if you just look at that, it looks stationary and you can't see it work. But using time-lapse, he could see what this thing did. And the first thing he realized was it behaves differently with a different lens filter over it. So if it's all blue light, it's going to act different than if it's all red light. It's going to act different than if it's all yellow light. And he started paying attention to that, and then, the rest unfolds. I mean, he learned so much. He was really a pioneer and way ahead of his time. And, when you think ancestrally, we're the only species on Earth that disconnected ourselves from the full spectrum of light. We're the only ones. Even indoors, people think they're getting light on a road trip and they're getting, plenty of sun coming in through the car. You got your, whatever, your window on the top of the car is a Tesla, right? Yeah. Well, open a sunroof is going to be awesome. But if you can't open it and it's just glass, you're still only getting blue light. It's blocking red, it's blocking IR, and it's blocking UV. So you're only getting one thing. And that's the same thing the screens give us.
Yeah. We're so inundated with the blue light, man. We got these lights on us right now. I'm like,
I imagine in 10 or 15 years, and Ott's, not predecessors, successors, his company has a full spectrum light, and there's full spectrum grow lights in the hemp industry and things like that, and so like more and more, I think in the future, we'll have all these puck lights will be replaced with full spectrum lights, and I'll have that in my house. Anybody in the know, it doesn't matter if it costs more. It's around the corner, but until then, Ott said we should have 6 hours of sunlight a day. That's the minimum.
Who in the United States is actually getting 6 hours of sunlight a day?
I got two.
Kyle
we have
Kingsbury.
a farm. We have a farm. My two, Eric and Brent, are my plant manager and my GM. They get 6 hours.
Yeah.
I'm on the farm. I help them as much as I can when I'm not working. I don't get 6 hours. So just knowing that, like I live on 118 acres and I make my own schedule and I still don't get 6 hours. Like it's a lot.
Eric and Brent might make it to 150 years old.
They're going to get, they're great. They're in phenomenal shape. They get easily 6 hours, easily.
Yeah. I had thought growing up that I was allergic to the sun, but really what I was allergic to was what I was putting on my skin before I went into the sun. The shitty lotions, shitty sunscreens, shitty oils, shitty perfume. And I had to, from a really young age, I had to figure that out. I would get gnarly blisters on my chest from overextending in the sun and also having shitty stuff on my skin. And so I switched to all natural, body care. And I'm really particular about any sunscreen that I put on. But usually when we're going into the sun, I'll get 15 minutes on each side. And then I'll put on an organic quality sunscreen. Yeah.
Organic sunscreens are still necessary. Like we went down to Corpus Christi with the kids and I burnt through a 50 SPF long sleeve. Like I was like, it's just 4 hours south. It fucked me up. I never burned in Austin and I got smoked in Corpus 4 hours south.
Wow. So
that is a problem, right? You don't want to have it overdone. And if you're going to be outside longer than you ought to be, right? And you can't find shelter because you're out on a boat or you're doing something, doing something fun with friends, then there's a time and a place for that. But if I go somewhere south, I got to be mindful of that, and some of the worst burns I've ever had in my life were in Peru. And I was laughing at the guy. I was like, I don't burn, dude. And he goes, you're going to burn.
Such high elevation.
Miraflores, on the Pacific. And I laid 30 minutes on one side and went to turn over, and I've never been so stiff in my life. I was like, oh God, you were right. But to your point, a lot of it is the stuff we put on our skin. It's the stuff we put in our body. Like your diet will affect if you burn or not as well.
Well, even in Oregon, 9 months out of the year, we have a lot of cloud cover, but just getting the cloud cover light in our eyes is just as great. Putting on a layer and going out and taking a walk.
Full spectrum. You're still getting full spectrum even through the clouds.
Yeah.
That's what
so
it's all
you
about.
don't have to live in a sunny place to get the quality light.
Yeah. You'd mentioned Brent and Eric over on the farm. I'd love to hear more about the Gardeners of Eden. What's happening there? Tell me more.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it was birthed out of fear in mid-quarantine. Like I was in panic mode. I'm listening to David Icke. I'm listening to Alex Jones. I'm diving into rabbit holes I never knew existed. And there's a certain bit of paranoia and panic that would come from anybody, from the world shutting down, whether you thought it was hunky-dory or not. But it these last few years have really helped me see fear differently. Because you don't want to live with fear, and fear can conquer you either in an acute setting, like in a fight in the UFC. If I'm too afraid, I'm fucked. Yeah. I'm not going to be myself. And in life, if I live with that, those are background apps running in my head that are running constantly. All those fears exist in tandem with whatever I'm trying to focus on. That comes at a cost to the bandwidth of my consciousness, right? So I don't want that just running rampant. But, the farm was birthed out of fear of us not being able to do live events with Fit for Service, and not knowing, if the grid was going to shut down, where I'd be able to feed my kids food, that kind of thing. And so I was in Aubrey's ear for all of 2020 and beyond that. Like we need a place where we can host people. We have Sedona, but we need a place in Texas, and I want to be there. I want to be able to grow our own food and provide that. And I want to not just be a voice for regenerative agriculture, but actually participate in it. End of 21, we got the place. We just moved in. We had our home built there and just moved in April of this year. And it's been incredible. We've run cattle for 2 years. There's been a drought, which has sucked because I've never wanted rain more in my life than when you have grass for animals and 400 fruit and nut trees in a food forest. Like I have never paid attention to rain that I do now, and it's like every drop of it that I'm so grateful for. But we moved our cows. We invested in more sheep. They did really well through the drought. And it's funny being a shepherd, but they're incredible too, and every year we have a ram harvest, and it's an interesting thing. Like we allow the females to stay and be moms and live long lives, and the boys are what we eat, and it's an interesting paradigm, a lot of gratitude for the boys, for the male rams, and because they're what feeds and sustains us, and mad respect for ruminants that heal the soil, that sequester carbon, that make the grass grow better and the land a sponge the way it once was, and that nourish our bodies, and mad respect for the bees and all the plants. Now we're in year 3. So we finally got, we had the peach trees erupted this year.
Nice.
And we're still so early on. It'll probably be 7 to 15 years before the trees are full grown. But, around year 7 is when they'll all be producing well. We can start counting on that to see like how many pounds of one particular fruit are we going to harvest each year. We've got, 100 chickens right now. We're going to add another 100 chicks in the spring. We've got 15 ducks, a few geese. We've got a lot of livestock guardian, Pyrenees protecting the sheep as well as protecting the chickens. So it's an amazing place. And every year, we have exotic animals too, like red deer and black buck. And they're, the red deer are like Harry Potter's Patronus. Like that's a spirit animal in living 3D. That's horns connected to source, and like you walk around dead sober, when you lock eyes with a champion, it's like, whoa, okay, I'll bow here. You're in charge. You're running the land. Thank you for allowing us to be here. Like they're incredible animals. But through the drought, we lose a couple animals every year through the heat. The heat is like the summers in Texas are like winters in a lot of other places. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard on even animals that can weather the greatest storms. One thing farming has taught me and the kids is how intimately connected life is with death. And it's unavoidably so. And just the reverence for the life of an animal when it dies. The main difference between how I lived before and how I live now is that every death is honored and it's sacred, you know, and we're harvesting now. We did 2 harvests this week. So if you guys want to come out, we want friends to come out and participate in the harvests where we'll cull 2 or 3 ram lambs and then participate in the field dressing. And then a few days later after dry aging, then we break them down into usable, delicious meats. So
I would absolutely love to participate in that.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Mondays. Yeah, let's do it.
And I heard a rumor that you're eating 100% of the food that you're eating is what you guys are raising.
Not quite yet. That is something,
Almost.
that is a
It's a
goal.
goal.
That is an absolute goal. I want our kids to be sick of lamb. I want them to say like, oh, Dad, lamb again, you know, like I want them is the thing is like the lamb is incredible. We eat every year. Even the fully grown rams are quite tasty, you know, but the lamb it's special. It's one of the very best things you can put in your body. It's of our land, so it's as local as you can fucking get. You know, it's like you're eating my backyard. You know, like we're in your yard. We live together. All of our eggs obviously come from the land. I would love to get a couple dairy cows, even though it's a lot more work. Just for the fact that we love raw milk. We have a delivery service. There's an amazing spot in Schulenburg, Texas, about 90 minutes southeast of us, and they have 300 acres, rolling green hills, all Jersey cows, A2 raw milk, and it's the very best. And so it's like, that's awesome. And we ought to do that ourselves. You know, There's no reason we can't do that. There's no reason we can't start doing our own yogurt, our own kefir, our own cheese. So that's something, you know, down the pipeline that we want to bring in.
And the kids are all out there participating in the harvest too.
Yeah, they're Bear, you know, he bled his first animal. So like to be blunt, he slit a throat from an animal that had been shot in the head, but was still alive.
And how old is Bear?
He's 9 years old, and that was his first. And he helped us field dress the animal, you know, and that he guys got a pelt. He's got his first pelt that we're going to tan with an old school brain tan, which is the indigenous people used. So you grind up the brain and you use that to scrape and rub through, and then you hang that. And that's going to go in his room. You know, he got to earn that. And so it's a really beautiful thing. You know, there is a level of appreciation. They're there when we have to, you know, when we have to cull certain animals that are sick. They'll want to come watch. And Wolfie's seen it too. And she's 4. You know, I still cry when I hunt and I'm successful. It's one of the weirdest things on earth because you have this elation of like, fuck yeah, I can provide for my family. I can eat what I kill. I can hunt. I love hunting, and it's been a beautiful ceremony that connects me back to what I put in my body, you know? And so having that more regularly and having the kids affected by that is such a beautiful one. Every week, today's Friday, and I'll stop here rambling, but we've been doing Farm Fridays. So there's a little homeschool co-op that we're with, and we bring all the kids out on Fridays, and they did their first chicken harvest. So we had to harvest a few nasty roosters that were picking on the hens and pulling all their feathers off, and all the kids got to participate in that. And it's every reaction to it. You know, like one 4-year-old said, I don't want to eat meat anymore, Mommy, because she knew like the chicken nuggets weren't nuggets, that they were a chicken that walked and lived, right? That's a normal piece of it too, you know, to have that experience, to maybe not want that for yourself, and then to circle back or to not circle back. But ultimately it was powerful for everyone. And it is something we ought to know, you know, it's something we should have that level of reverence when we eat meat, to know this was a living being that's now sustaining us.
Yeah.
I caught my first Chinook salmon.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Did you go to the gorge? Where'd you go?
We were in Oregon on the coast.
The Siuslaw River.
Yeah, the Siuslaw River.
Beautiful.
And we had a guide, so it was really set up nicely for us. But just to be able to catch your own fish and then cook the fish and eat the fish. And
Chinook's
there's
incredible,
nothing
too.
more fresh than just killing it right there, catching it
And
right
eating
there.
it for dinner.
Yeah.
We usually have the liver while it's still warm. You know, we won't eat the whole thing because it's prized and our body wouldn't process that much nutrient dense food, but we have a slice of liver every time we harvest. And it's like that warm organ that does so much for the body. That is literally the best superfood on planet Earth, maybe next to oysters, as you guys know. There's something to that, to take in something that's that alive.
That reverence piece is really speaking to me about having reverence for the animal. I never hunted. I didn't grow up hunting. I have a lot of family that was into hunting, but I just, for whatever reason, it just wasn't a thing in my immediate family. But I grew up on a dairy farm, and my brother and I used to sit on the big iron gates and watch when the cows would be butchered. And, the butcher would like give us the eyeballs to play with or give us the brain or whatever. But we would watch these cows be taken apart. And it was always really fascinating for me. I loved it when the butcher would come, because I got to play with eyeballs, but also just watching these animals being taken apart was just so intriguing for me as a kid. I think it was like 6 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just one thing that I've been really curious about as we were preparing for this is how do you keep the kids really interested in this aspect of your lives, and how do you keep them wanting to stay active? You and Tosh stay so active, and also keeping them wanting to be involved in the farm.
Yeah, there was a learning curve for Bear, and Wolfie, God, she's her own person for sure. It's funny is like people say the terrible twos are fine. 3 and 4 is where you get a lot of no's and a lot of yelling and a lot of
wait until 13
pushback.
though.
Oh, for sure. Especially for girls, it's like, I forget which book I was reading. It might've been, one of Ben Greenfield's ebooks, but he said like for fit parents that really want their kids to be active in the modern world with all the distractions and all the other shit, doing things in front of them is one of the most important things you can do.
Just demonstrating.
Yeah. So like we'll roll out 4 yoga mats, and Tasha and I will do yoga, and Wolfie will come crawl underneath us when we're in down dog, and she'll hit 3-legged dog, and then she'll crawl underneath us again. And Bear, he'll join us for half of it and then complain and sit down when it gets hard. And just them witnessing us do the full practice is enough for them to integrate that into their own lives. I built a $10,000 dojo in my garage with springboard fucking mats, like Olympic training level, center kind of place.
Nice.
And we've got, the big Sonos 5 speakers in there. And for me, that's my dojo. I'll go in there, I'll train with the boys, I'll bring the boxing, the farm boys in. And sometimes Bear will join us. Sometimes Wolfie will come in and do the windmill punches, and something, Pama, and let loose. But most of the time,
Get her rage out.
That's their dance hall. And all of Eric's kids, are homeschooled and right around the same age. I coach them all in jiu-jitsu, and they're like, Uncle Kyle, can we put the music on? I was like, absolutely. So I'll throw on dance music, and they'll go in there and just have a ball running around, rolling on the mats and having fun. And I love that there's an invitation for that as well. It's not like, hit the gong, bow to your sensei, Mr. Serious when you enter the mat space. It should be a place for tumbling and having fun and being ridiculous, and knowing that it's pretty hard to get hurt in there unless you're running into your buddy's elbow or knee, Mm-hmm. But, having that, doing those practices there. Tosh goes out. So we have a deadlift jack outside the house, because even though we have a big ass gym that's outdoors by the main house, it's a half mile away. It's like, I'm just not going to do it if I have to be a half mile away, because that means you're not working and you're watching the kids. It's much easier if I can just put on something and have the kids come out back with me. And that's one of our favorite exercises. So she'll go out there and deadlift. And after maybe a couple weeks of doing that, Bear's like, I want to deadlift, and so really lightly with perfect form, we teach him how to deadlift. So I think teaching that at a really young age has been cool, but it's just an open invitation. We don't force them to do anything, but we do it enough in front of them that there's always that invite. And more often than not, though, they want to get in. And so when Wolfie sees Big Brother doing that, she'll go to her kettlebell and pick it up and go, yeah.
Is it pink?
It is pink. It is a little pink one. Yeah, exactly. It's a little pink one.
That's
so
sweet.
There's ways to incorporate things like that keep them interested. And there's also chores that kids don't want to do, where it's like tough shit. This is going to make you better. And that's something that Leonard Sachs really speaks to, because he's got the degree in psychology. He looks at a lot of retroactive studies from kids that have grown up. And one that they looked at that was particularly most important, I think it was a female PhD that brought this up, was that if you looked at all these different factors of what led to success, happiness, marriage success, business success, was there any one particular trait, if a kid had it when they were young, that would equate to all those things in the end? You guys know what it is?
Chores.
Close. It was grit, hardworking. If you were hardworking, then you would have success in marriage. Marriage is fucking hard. Success as a parent, parenting's fucking hard. Success in your job, because if you're not a hard worker, it doesn't matter how talented you are, you're not going to last. So all those things, financial success, all of that comes from if you're a hard worker or not. And there are ways, as it turns out, to help kids get that. And chores are a big piece of that, shit that's a non-negotiable. You got to do this because I'm doing this, and this is what this is what's required as a part of being in our family. Bear washes his own dishes. He'll clean the chicken coop with mom anytime they have the opportunity to. Usually once or twice a week, they're out there doing that. And these are things, like we have hired people to do a lot of this, but like we want to participate in it. Like we want to get our fucking hands dirty and want to be a part of this. And that makes everything better. Like Bear has such a deeper appreciation for the chickens. He's connected to them now because he knows he's got to shovel shit and he's got to be a part of that. And Wolfie's not quite old enough to get in there, but she will still be there with them with her tiny hands, grab fresh pine and sprinkle it out when we have to put new pine out. And so she's participating in it. She's a part of it. And I think just having those things, as like set pieces is really, you can do that in a way where it's going to lift the kids. It's going to teach them about hard work and the necessities of life without being the taskmaster.
And do either of them have screens?
Absolutely not. Rudolf Steiner, who I mentioned a lot in the program and teaching, was a brilliant, brilliant guy. He was the founder of Waldorf style education, and all Waldorfs are franchises, so they can be run correctly or they can be run incorrectly. And we had Bear at a Waldorf in 2019 and 2020. They do kindergarten 3 years straight, 4, 5, and 6. So you get to be the young kid, the middle kid, and the older kids that are the leaders. You also know at every grade, the kid's 2 years behind you and the kid's 2 years ahead of you. So it forms this bond and teaches about leadership and whatnot. And one of the things they make you do is they make you sign an agreement, like no screens whatsoever, right? And when your kid's 16 and can drive, then they're allowed to have a cell phone, which they're only allowed to use after school to text you what they're doing. They can't call, they can't surf the web. If they do that, phone's confiscated, right? No iPads, none of that shit. If you watch TV, say we watch a Disney movie once a week, start doing that every other week, and then start doing that once a month, and then phase it out completely. And this is in particular for kids under 7. So Steiner was saying, don't teach a kid how to read or write until after 7 years old, because every 7 years, you have a cycle. And if you start implementing writing and reading and mathematics too early, it can make them too logical, right? You eliminate some of that creative side, some of the feminine aspects of the brain. And we pulled Bear out of Waldorf in 2020 because they decided to follow CDC guidelines and mask everyone up. And we were like, you're going to do online education for a kindergartner? They're going to make them sit in front of an iPad. It's like, what happened to that shit we signed? But that led to us starting a homeschool co-op. We got to meet Del Bigtree, Mickey Willis and his kids, Tucker Max and his kids, the Vanderbeeks, so many awesome people from there. And then everybody still, after that first year, kind of split off and did their own thing. And ultimately, I don't judge anybody for screens, but when you see the amount, like, first of all, the people who created these screens would never give them to their kids. Mm-hmm. Creators of the iPhone, iPad never would give those to their kids. And there is a temptation to let the iPad raise your kid. Mm-hmm. There's a temptation. Mommy and daddy need a break. And every now and then, there's some good shit. Like I like Storybots on Netflix. There's some stuff. And then there's just some weird shit like Pocoyo or YouTube Kids with Blippi. And you're like, what the fuck is this kid watching right now? Mm-hmm. What are these ads? Like it's some kind of weird subliminal messaging happening. Like this is not good, and it's you'll recognize it in your kids when they see something like Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. Bear was not himself for probably 5 hours after that movie. Because it was way too much. It overloaded the brain.
So stimulating.
Exactly. And so like really being mindful of that with the kids until they're older pays dividends. And I see this in, other friends and family, my nieces and nephews, are allowed to watch whatever they want to watch. And they, air quotes, have ADHD and can't pay attention. Like they can pay attention to their fucking video game for 8 hours. They don't have ADHD.
When it goes back to the modeling too of, are you sitting there and scrolling on your phone? And it's going to make the kid want to sit and scroll on their phone. And so that's a big habit that I want to really be super intentional with when baby comes.
Yeah, those good habits are important. And, we're not Nazis about it. Like we watch Disney movies and shit like that every now and then, as long as there's no woke content in it, which, it is a nice treat. And we'll still see like the kids have a very hard time winding down and going to sleep after that if we're watching that in the evening, and it's just like it's part and parcel. They won't sit still when I'm reading to them after that. And it's like, all right, you got a lot of energy to move right now. That's okay. It comes from that. It doesn't mean zero, but really paying attention, really paying attention to that, I think makes sense. And then, through trial and error, understanding, like where there's going to be, I don't blame the kids. It's not like, sit still, it's time for bed. It's like, no, I did that to you. Like, let me work with you here. Let me massage your legs. Let me ground you back here, and then allow you to get tired, and allow that to be a natural progression, even if we end up staying up till 9 o'clock reading.
The greatest gift I was ever given was my parents not putting me on ADHD medication and buying me a trampoline. It works.
Bellicons are the best. They're a little bit more expensive, but there's no springs. It's just bungee.
Yeah, the springs can get dangerous.
Well, you just don't hear it either. It's like the kids can be on that thing and all. It's very light in the sound. It's just like, fucking have at it.
Have at it. And that's where Joan and I really connect too, is we were both raised out in nature. And I grew up on 20 acres in the woods and was outside all the time. So that's what I would like to continue to raise my kids in too. Mm-hmm.
I can just picture you as a kid running around in the woods.
I got a lot of ticks, actually. A lot of trees. I was the best tree climber, and I'd go all the way to the top and just be swaying at the top, waving at my parents. And they're like, you need to get down.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You were a wild child.
I was.
Well, we're going to be wrapping things up, Kyle. And when I think about everything that we've talked about today, I just recognize there's so much knowledge that you have. Like, you've got such a sharp brain. There's so many books, so many teachers, so many places of knowledge that you've just been absorbing. And I really feel like you do a great job at embodying your knowledge and applying it to your life, which to me just speaks to the wisdom that you've got. And so my last question for you would be, knowing everything that you know now and the wisdom that you've got today, what would be a piece of advice you would have given yourself during your greatest hardship?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that come to mind. One, I got on a journey maybe a couple years ago when I was really living, I wasn't having the lived experience of polarity that I did when I was a fighter, where it was like just literal and 3D perfectness and then debauchery. But it was very hard to see through duality, and I kept trying to poke through, and I just kept staying stuck there, especially in journeys with plant medicines. And it just dawned on me that any problem that I see, due to the law of polarity and duality, the equal and opposite is true in tandem. So the second I see a problem in the world or in my life, the remedy for that problem exists in tandem, simultaneously, in the now, right now. So it's just a matter of accessing that and trusting that I always fall forward. I always fall upward, And so I've had many, many leaps of faith, I'm thinking of, Harrison Ford tossing dirt on the invisible bridge, many, many times where I've had to cross that bridge without getting to throw dirt across. And it's always lifted me. It's always lifted my family. It's lifted our financial situation. It's lifted our wisdom. It's lifted our hearts. And in every way possible, life continues to get better and better. And even when facing, really hard, challenging shit, I think that's, we're right there right now with some big changes in our lives. And I have the memory of all the times we leveled up when faced with really big challenges. So I utilize that now. And Aubrey would always say, use hindsight as foresight. And it's damn hard to do when you're in the thick of shit. But at the same time, if I was to give myself wisdom, it'd be understanding that law, that the solution simultaneously exists within the problem. And, every trust fall I make, I level up.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely, guys.
Thank you so much for being here and spending your day with us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
We love you so much.
I love you all. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
If people want to learn more or find out more about what you're doing in the world, how can they find you?
Yeah, I'm redeveloping kingsbu.com. That's KINGSBU.com. Be starting a community January 1st. So it's going to be just $100 a month for people that sign in early on as founding members, and it'll go up after that. But I'm really excited for that to have, Fit for Service has been great, but it's also been $4,000 a ticket. And a lot of people can't make that $4,000 commitment. or the 1,500 for the online, education that we're doing now. And so kingsbury.com, at Kyle Kingsbury on Instagram. I'm finally back after 4 years of a hiatus, at Kingsbury on Twitter. Less active there, but I think Instagram is going to be something we really have a big push towards as far as creating content, sharing information, and having a touch point with people.
And the Kyle Kingsbury podcast.
That's right, which is always fire. But yeah, I've had phenomenal guests on and lesser known people like Dr. Alexis Jasmine Callan, who has just blew my mind for an hour and a half on all things light. And I'm going to venture out too. I've really been diving into a lot of fiction lately. So like Brandon Sanderson's work, I did a post on that. Red Rising, another fucking awesome one. Pierce Brown. I think the inspirational piece from these fiction books is awesome. And a lot of it's on the archetype of the warrior and the archetype of the king and the archetype of the lover and the archetype of the magician, and just so many cool things that are inspiring. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'll be talking more about that too in the community and as shit goes on. So just wanted to leave those with people. Like if you're done reading self-help and shit like that, these Sanderson books and Pierce Brown books are fantastic.
Thank you.
Absolutely, guys.
Thanks, Uncle Kyle.
Yay.
We love you.
We love y'all.
Be well.
Thank you for joining us today on the BZen Wellness Podcast. We hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to continue on your personal quest.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. And if you want to learn more or dive deeper into these topics, visit our website and follow us on social media.
Until then, friends, breathe deep, take some time for yourself, and remember, you are already whole. Goodbye, dear hearts.